It is a great privilege for me to be standing on this stage. I want to thank Cancer GPS, Dr. Chinnasamy, and all the wonderful speakers that we've heard today. I have learned so much in such a short time period about the people that have spoken today that I've heard their names, I've seen them, I've met some of their folks that are utilizing their services in our community and around our community in cancer around the world. And let me tell you, everybody watching from around the world on the cameras, y'all make sure that you take what you learned today and bring it back to your individual communities. And those of you that are from High Point or perhaps from surrounding areas of the Piedmont Triad, do the same. You may be wondering, what in the world is a chef standing on a stage with all these cancer experts for? So, thought I'd answer that first very quickly. And in a way, I'm speaking for the two individuals who are outside this hallway whose portraits are standing in this building, who both died of cancer. And I myself was diagnosed at 22 years of age with a very rare gastrointestinal stromal tumor, malignant. My mother's over there. She got the phone call. And she had to make the very difficult walk down the hallway to come to my bedroom as I was laying there after surgery, having this tumor removed out of my body, to tell me that I had a malignant tumor pulled out of my stomach, possibly telling me that the dreams that I had of becoming a professional chef were going to come to an end. You know, you got two choices. You can hear bad news in life, like a cancer diagnosis, and you can go, you know what, to hell with it, I'm done. Let it take me. Or you can do, all of you, what I did, which is to say, you know what, I'm going to beat this, and then I'm going to make a difference in this world. All right, so let's rewind. It's 2001. We all know what happened in 2001. It was a devastating year for our country, devastating year for the world. You know, everybody remembers 9/11. Everybody remembers the events that followed that. Everybody was scared, out of their minds to travel. I called her, and I said, do I come home? She says, no. I said, I'm not feeling well. She says, stay in Miami. I was in Miami at the time at culinary school because I left this little itty-bitty town that we're all in right now, and that those of you that are watching around the world, you can see this is a small town, America, High Point, North Carolina. And I'm sitting there in Miami, and I'm crying my eyes out going, what can I do? What can I do? She says, stay. And I said, but Mom, I'm really not feeling well. She says, stay. Fast forward to November. I'm getting feverish. I'm turning pale as the white shirt on the young lady up front here. I mean, my face was looking as white as day. It turned out I was bleeding internally. Fast forward to December, and you got that phone call. Your worst nightmare. Your child had a malignant tumor. And what do you do? What do you do when you get that news? A lot of you in this room have gotten that news. Me, turned out to be a stomach cancer, and I said, I'll show this thing. So, many of you have read the story about the orange shoes, and I'll save you the trouble of, if you don't have the Cancer GPS book, you got to get it. It's a fantastic story about my brother. I handed him a pair of orange shoes, and I told him, the man who helped organize this event, I said, wear these orange shoes on every red carpet in Hollywood and tell them about me. And tell them that your brother had stomach cancer, a rare tumor, and how rare this disease was. Keep in mind, we have all this social media and networking groups that we have now for cancer. Many of you have been blessed with the information today that you already knew about. But I didn't have any of that, neither did she or he. So my mother and my father, they were desperate for information, and so we had to go with what the doctors were saying, which was, hey, pull that tumor out surgically, go in, start doing colonoscopies and endoscopies and all kinds of routines. In your 20s, as a chef, that's a death sentence. Or is it? Because I said, you know what? I'm going to take the opportunity today to talk to you all a little bit about our food supply too. All right? immediately after getting out of the hospital, you remember this, I actually said, you know what? I made a deal with myself. I said, no more typical 20-year-old diet. No more processed food. No more junk. I'm going all organic, baby. And I'm going hyper-local before it was cool to do that. Hyper-local being that you're sourcing directly from the community, from farms that are grown in the same soil that your water source is from. In fact, many hospitals are doing that now. They're feeding their patients with hyper-local vegetables and fruits. It's becoming a trend in most hospitals now. So you'll see it filtered down to this community very soon. And then, as I'm standing around as a survivor, I'm wondering, okay, I got through it, fast forward a few years, and I'm wondering, what do I do now? Well, as it turns out, there were some patients that needed some help. So I started helping them. I started catering for them, because keep in mind, I'm rebuilding my entire digestive tract as I go up and down my chest. Forgive me. I still have this scar here that reminds me daily. And as I'm doing that, I'm eating organically, locally, naturally, oftentimes 60% veggies, 40% meat protein or fish protein. Organic, natural, local healing. In conjunction with traditional medicinal practices. Okay? So, fast forward a few years, and that theme song you just heard, that was the theme song that was the gift that was given to me by my brother who helped put on this event. He went out west, and he went out to the award ceremonies, and he wore the orange sneakers, so he was fulfilling a promise to me. Wore the orange sneakers on the carpet, and he managed to talk a producer into producing a cooking television show. And that television show ran for 4 seasons on a network called MAV TV, and it was called Thankfully Local with Chef Chuck, in which I shared my journey and quite frankly opened up, as I'm doing to you today, very openly, talking about how cancer changed my life and how the food was part of the healing process. My experience in the last year, I've really started noticing exactly what the food in our diets and how it correlates with our health, more specifically with a cancer diagnosis. Hurricane Florence in this state opened my eyes. I've been volunteering and also started my own nonprofit based around helping feed people healthier food, particularly those in the homeless community that have been made homeless by natural disaster. It's called ESCA of the Carolinas. And I fed 500 people last Thanksgiving, and their top question to me was, what do we do about this food crisis that we have in our country? And it's haunted me even to the day that I'm here. Because I'm starting to realize that, unlike some of the other countries around the world that are watching this, that America has a huge problem. We have a huge problem. Maybe you've heard about it recently with the red tides in Florida that basically ruined entire ecosystems because of the fertilizers used, and it flowed down the water and into the Gulf and destroyed our food supply there. Perhaps you heard about Florence and what it did to this state, closer to home. Chicken, pork, beef, whole industries and whole farms destroyed. And believe you me, I volunteered to go down there, and the smells still haunt me. But it's the industrial farming of the food that got me really thinking. Maybe the corporate food supply has something to do with a diagnosis of something like cancer or other rare diseases. Because surely if an animal hardly has oxygen, let alone access to free range itself, and that's passed down into our food supply, and that abuse is passed down into our food supply, perhaps that has something to do with whether or not we have a rare cancer. I don't know. But the studies are certainly starting to show it. I myself, being a survivor, have really taken this on hardcore. Hardcore. My father and I did a trip across the country, and as you enter into Oklahoma, You can see it all around you. Animals that are put into pens, and really some of the worst smells you'll ever smell. We had to roll the windows up. It was so terrible. Along Interstate 40 of all things. This is where our food supply is coming from. So what's the solution? Well, the solution, first and foremost, especially in healing oneself from disease, is found, in my opinion, now look, I'm standing here because I did it. It doesn't work in every patient, but sometimes you got to think outside of the box. You got to think about talking to your doctor about your diet. They're not always going to ask you about your diet. You have to talk to them about it. Also, irregular cell growth because of what you're eating. That can always happen when you're eating processed foods. We're starting to see more and more statistics about that. And you're also starting to see more and more statistics about hyper-local eating and the importance of that. In fact, here in High Point, there's a farmer's market that took place today right over on Main Street, just over by the library. And, of course, in every community around the world, there's a way to source products local. One important part to my healing from stomach cancer has been not only hyper-local sourcing, but also purchasing food that is grown in seasonality. So I don't eat tomatoes in the wintertime, but I do eat acorn squash and butternut squash that's organically grown, or at least naturally grown. What's the difference? The difference is that you got one farmer that can't afford organic certification but uses organic standards. So the challenge I have for all of you today is when you go to the grocery store, or maybe when you go over to your local farmer's market, or perhaps even visit a farm tour, do yourselves a favor. Ask the questions. Ask the question, how is this food raised? Are you using chemical pesticides? Are any of your neighbors using chemical pesticides? Because all of that is seeping into our food, and believe it or not, into our water. I'm on a well where I live. You're on city water. The big difference here is the chemicals that go in to purify that water, right? We've all heard about this process. But we're also taking that in without even thinking. Even with filters on our refrigerators and filters in our whole house in some cases. We've got to really rethink as cancer survivors, as caregivers, and as patients, that we are what we eat. We are what we eat. Hey, listen, I'm not saying that I don't like barbecue, okay? I'm not saying I don't like pork barbecue. Don't get me wrong. I heard your experience. And believe you me, in my 20s, I had a lot of that, okay? Because in my 20s, when I was trying to recover from stomach cancer, it was more or less experimentation. They had no idea what would digest through a quarter of a digestive tract, which, by the way, I had a third of my stomach removed, most of my small intestine, a good portion of my large intestine gone. Only staples holding it together on the inside. So needless to say, it was a long journey to get here today, to be able to talk to you and tell you about this. So ask the questions of the farmers and the people who are growing your food, particularly if you're a meat eater, a carnivore. Ask the questions. If you see labels, look at the labels. Read the labels. Maybe I can make that marinade instead of having all that preservative and chemical in the food that I'm eating. Or perhaps I can have a chef do it for me, at an affordable price, of course. But that's what I do now. I'm a private chef, and I'm very pleased to have one of my clients and dear friends with me that came to support me today. But it's been a long, long journey getting here. And I still remember the day that he called me, Dr. Chinnasamy called me. He says, I'm starting this organization called Cancer GPS, and one degree or another, you've got to be a part of it. And I said, I wouldn't have it any other way. And evidence of this success is the joy and then sometimes the tears that we've had over the years together as an organization of GPS. So remember, you are what you eat. Ask the difficult questions. And make sure to remember that no matter where you live, stay thankfully local. I'm Chef Chuck. See you soon.
Yeah.